Why don't we go ahead and start it off? I will start us with an opening prayer, and then I'm gonna allow Anna to be the host for tonight. She'll introduce our speaker, Brenda, which we're excited to have with us. And we thank you all for being with us. I think we got over those technical difficulties. We are getting accustomed to, even though we're a little over a month in already, these quarantine blues, I guess, and some of these technology hiccups. But that's just the way it is. So let's just start with a quick prayer in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we thank you for bringing us together as a community of young professionals, of Catholic young professionals, who continue to strive to live their faith in their workplace, to make an impact in society through our profession. Help us to continue to see what we do in our work and in our careers a reflection of you and your life in us and your love for us. And we ask you to inspire us tonight, open our hearts, inspire Brenda, and lead us to where you would like us to be tonight. And we offer all this in the name of our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, Anna, you'll be our host tonight.
Yay.
Yay.
Well, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Brenda, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, no problem. So to give you a little background on Brenda, she has been working at Robert Half for 14 years. Mm-hmm. She was awarded the Robert Half's President's Club Award and the Chairman Club Award in 2016. And in 2017, she was selected as one of Florida's most powerful and influential women by the Florida Diversity Council and was nominated as the top 20 professional under 40 by Brickle magazine. So here we have Brenda.
Thanks. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. And I hope everyone is doing okay during these difficult times. So, actually, when Carolina approached me to speak today to your group about just some job advice, interview advice, I definitely wanted to jump on the opportunity to connect with all of you. I know that business has shifted and businesses have shifted. Everyone has changed. Everyone's at home. So job search is a little bit different, but hopefully we can definitely have a conversation and I can help out as much as possible. So feel free to obviously jump in, ask questions, and at the end we'll definitely answer as many questions as you like. Perfect. So I guess to start, we could really talk about like what we're living in right now, our reality. I'm sure that a lot of people did not think that starting this year they were going to be searching for a new job or getting furloughed from their current job after being, perhaps some for many, many years. I mean, I've been hearing as a recruiter from everything from people getting their hours cut to their salaries being cut. And I think it's just a huge curveball that we're really trying all to navigate. And to be honest, we don't know what's going to be happening in the next few months in the marketplace, but there is, I think, steps, and I think that we could still be very hopeful that things will turn around, and we'll talk about a couple of different advices that maybe you could be able to do while you're at home and trying to seek for that, new position. So, I guess, as I see a lot of you on the screen, has anyone on this group, I guess, been let go or looking for a job right now? Just so I have an idea, I guess, is if you guys want to raise your hand if you are, searching employment. So a couple of things that I guess I hear a lot, Anna, is, first of all, obviously all of these people were let go. We have a huge, people right now searching for work. I mean, our company's even hiring. So is it worth even, doing anything right now? Because, if companies were laying off and you have all these people seeking unemployment, is it worth, right now my time to start looking for employment? And I would say that the answer is yes. A lot of companies are still trying to figure out how they have to move businesses, and that includes hiring. So what we see is that companies are just really analyzing their business right now and just kind of deciding what departments or what they need and kind of searching for those roles. I hear a lot, positions that are being recruited right now are for customer service. We hear a lot of collections, a lot of IT. So, you know, it just kind of like how you are going to be visible to these employers to get noticed, and obviously, you know, to make a difference once these companies obviously start hiring for, you know, what they're needing currently. I hear a lot of companies, as I'm in contact with many, many employers every single day through my role, you know, that they are very aware that right now there's a lot of good talent out there. You know, 2 months ago, unemployment was under 4% in Florida, right? And so it was difficult to find really good people. And right now, everything has just shifted, and companies know that. They're like, well, you know, I know a lot of people were just laid off or furloughed, or, you know, there's a lot of people that are going to be out there. So I think companies know that and are going to be smart about hiring. So it's not going to be a case where, you know, they may be just like, well, you know what, I'm not going to hire anyone, because they are going to want to take advantage of the talent that's, you know, currently out there. Okay. So, okay. So, you know, I just, I don't know if you wanted to ask anything, but I'll keep going on my list. But just in general, you know, as you know, interviewing right now, it's a little different, right? Obviously, I know a lot of us, you know, we're used to, you send out your resume, you send out your cover letter, you may get a phone interview, and then you go in person, right? So even though Skype has existed for a very, you know, long time, not a lot of companies were going that route when you're doing the interviews. And now we have to prepare ourselves that this entire interview process may be from start to finish completely remotely and virtually. So you're going to probably meet more than one hiring manager online, do all of these interviews, do salary negotiations, all of those type of things before you even set foot into a company, or even perhaps even starting remotely, because that's actually been an option that companies have started to get creative, where they are maybe hiring individuals and maybe starting them on a remote basis until they actually are able to go back into an actual office setting. So although it seems like something that could have been, you know, that might have been a little bit different, you know, how am I going to accept a position of a company that I've never gone into? It's kind of becoming a little bit of the new normal right now, where, you know, we're seeing that a lot of, you know, people are just getting offers and being able to, you know, start working remotely. When you're talking about like, how do I start looking for a job right now? And, you know, and there's definitely a couple of steps that I could share. You know, if you've been looking for a job recently, you know that there's a lot of job boards, and that's definitely a great way to start. Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, all of those are job sites that obviously are consistently posting jobs, and, you know, you should be aware of and creating those alerts. But right now, because we're not in normal times, I think I would recommend make sure that you guys are digging a little deeper. You know, there's so many different websites that have appeared right now. I shared a list actually with Carolina and with Anna, so you can, you know, obviously ask them for just, you know, a list, so I don't go through all of them. But there's so many different websites. There's some called, like, for example, Flex Jobs, AngelList, Remotive, and they deal a lot with these consulting type of jobs and IT jobs and remote jobs. So I would definitely, if you're really actively looking for work right now, you know, definitely go into other websites. Don't just rely on the normal, typical, you know, Career Builder, Monster, and Indeed. It's important to go to companies you're targeting as well. Go in directly into their websites. A lot of companies recently had posted jobs, and maybe they haven't even taken them down, and you can have an idea of, you know, what they were posting recently for. Still maybe even have a shot if you still apply for that job, or, you know, as when, you know, companies start actively to interview again. So definitely, you know, you should go in directly to those websites of the company itself and look under, you know, jobs and see what positions may come along. Also, if you work with recruiters like myself, you know, like Anna said, I've been with Robert Half for 14 years, and I specialize mostly in administrative and accounting type of roles. You can sign up with many recruiters. So you're not exclusive to just working with one recruiter. The benefit of that is that, you know, when a company posts your job, they're going to get hundreds and not, if not thousands of, applicants. So when you're working one-on-one with a recruiter and you never know what relationships they may have with certain hiring managers, they're able to sell your background, on your behalf. So they're able to actually go and say, you know what, I just met Eric, I just met Anna. This is their background. This is why you should meet them. They can talk about your soft skills, which sometimes when you're just sending out a resume, that doesn't really happen. I would love to personally place everybody I meet with, and that doesn't happen. But you know what? It's still worth going out there and meeting with the recruiters, because you also get a lot that you may not typically get from an interview. For example, when you're talking to a recruiter one-on-one, he or she may be able to give you advice on your interview skills. And, at the end of the interviews, I always like to share, hey, you know what? Yeah, I really enjoyed speaking with you, but I would make sure that you're talking a little bit more about this job or this skill set, or make sure, be careful what you're saying when you're talking about why you left each position. Sometimes I may interview somebody that every job they left, it was because, well, I was seeking a better opportunity. I was seeking a better opportunity. What is that maybe saying to employers about you? It could, go into like, well, you know what? They're always going to be looking for something else. They're never going to be happy here. So there's just certain answers that maybe you may not notice. But when you're speaking one-on-one with a recruiter, you may be able to actually be able to, they may be able to coach you through that. There's other instances where, for example, with a recruiter, they can be able to like help you sign on for free online training, which is something that, that sometimes you may not be able to just, get. So just getting to free online trainings and just getting, opportunity to be able to hear about other jobs, even if they're on a short-term basis. I think that right now, it is a time that we have to be very flexible if you're looking for a job, and maybe if you get offered that temporary job, it could be a stepping stone to something bigger, or it could be just, an opportunity for you to be able to, get some extra skill sets. So I would say make sure to be flexible. At many times I may call someone for a temporary job, and it may be just, hey, I have a data entry job for a couple of weeks. And I'm always surprised when someone's like, well, no, you know what, I'm going to wait for something else. You know what, 4 weeks, no, I'm really not interested in that. When you never know what that could lead. There's like so many times that I may have a client that may have someone doing that data entry project, and they're like, wow, this person was really fantastic. I love their skill set. I love their attitude. They were so responsible. You know what? I would love to see the rest, their resume, and make sure that I can, consider them for other projects as they come along. So things like that definitely happen out there if you are out there and exposing yourself and exposing your talents, to different companies. So I think it's important that, to be flexible when it comes to that. Obviously utilize your network. I think that's also something that's extremely important. Make sure, even though a lot of companies or people or groups are not doing these in-person networking events right now, or doing, big conferences or things that we may be used to assisting, and you're like, how am I going to network and get my name out there right now? There's still so many of ways and opportunities to be able to get your name out there and let people know, like, hey, I'm on the hunt. There's LinkedIn. Take this time and take it to consideration and update your LinkedIn. This is a time where you should be updating your picture. Make sure that you're posting and reposting different articles that have to do with what you're really trying to target. So just by doing those little things, it's just kind of exposing yourself and getting your name a little bit more out there. And I would say that I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I've never seen so much activity going on LinkedIn. So it's definitely, if you're looking for a job, you should be on that site every day. There's just a lot of articles that have been shared, and just getting to know hiring managers, and they're actually very responsive right now too. So maybe because they're at home a lot, but definitely making sure to connect with those hiring managers. That could be a good way to start. Touching base with your previous coworkers, managers, asking them to do recommendations on LinkedIn. That maybe is an area that a lot of people don't utilize as much. They may think, well, you're great. I do. Of course I have a LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn. It has my last 3, 4, 5 jobs, and that's it, right? But there's so many different categories on LinkedIn that you could be able to utilize. You can be able to post pictures of, you in doing your networking, doing your group activities with your team. If you're a manager or a leader of a group leader, showing that leadership, so make sure to post those pictures that tell a little bit more than just your resume. That's the whole purpose, obviously, of LinkedIn. And then there's also that category of, asking for references. So you can ask your previous managers or coworkers to, write a quick reference on you, and do the same to them, obviously, right? So you can ask for reference and then return the favor, write a reference for them. But maybe this is the time too, as we are just kind of cleaning up all of that, that you can be able to really dedicate some extra time to your LinkedIn page, and being able to do those different like tips, just really help you to be a little bit more visible, because these days it's all about being visible out there. Sometimes you may add it on your Facebook or Instagram, but a lot of times companies or coworkers, you don't really share sometimes that information, and that's okay. You don't have to be friends with everybody on social media, but at least on that LinkedIn, it is a good way to be able to start to be a little bit more visible.
Brenda, and it seems like a lot of us, whether we're looking for a job or not, we have to come out of our comfort zone if we're not used to social media.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I have had to do that myself just
Mm-hmm.
to make my job more effective,
Mm-hmm.
because and I'm not really that comfortable on social media. So,
Yeah.
but now I feel like in this time I have to get out there. And you were saying how at LinkedIn, I'm not really that active there. And I'm surprised at how much activity is going there and how much can be done with that particular website. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of coming out of your comfort zone, especially if you're looking for your job, that you have to get mobile, and
Mm-hmm.
this is where employers are looking. They're looking virtually. Is that how they're trying to find candidates for the most part?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of employers, when they receive a resume, they go to LinkedIn and just get to know a little bit more about you. So make sure that also when you're, updating your resume, you're updating your LinkedIn as well. I've had situations where an employer may take back the resume and it's like, you know what? No, I'm not wanting to meet that person because what they have on their LinkedIn, the dates don't match, so it is important to be staying current with all of these different, sources when you're looking, and getting very very well rounded within these websites. It is important to be able to keep, to keep yourself out there and keep yourself visible. Absolutely.
And if you're gonna interview virtually, if we were not in quarantine, that
Mm-hmm.
in-person interview, that first in-person interview, that first impression is critical.
Yeah.
Really important. How do you? What are some tips if we're going to interview virtually for the most part?
Mm-hmm.
How do we make that first impression great if we're
Yeah.
virtual? How do we do? I mean, what are some tips for that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, first of all, you definitely want to make sure that you're testing these websites, the Zoom and the Teams. And, obviously, I know, like, for example, we had some hiccups and it can happen, right? So make sure that if you're not that savvy with it, that you are testing it out maybe with your friends or family member just to make sure, hey, am I having my Wi-Fi is enough for this, right? So make sure to, test your equipment, dress professionally. I think that's very important. It definitely makes you, just feel like I'm in the zone, I'm in an interview, so even though, yes, there's all this flexibility, everyone knows we're in quarantine and everyone knows we're working from home, it's still, you want to dress for an interview just like as you were, if you were going in person, so I would make sure that you throw on the blazer, and these professional settings. But today I was very happy about this because I'm like, oh, I get to put on my makeup and my blazer. But either way, I'm every day, you never know if when I have to switch on the camera, speak to a candidate, speak to a client. So you always want to make sure that you are video ready. Make sure there's no clutter in the background. Sometimes people decide to do these interviews in a room where they have all this stuff behind them and it just is very distracting. So it may not cause that first, best impression. So definitely make sure that you're in a good space with good lighting, good audio. All of those things make, a huge difference because these interviews are only going to be probably 15, 20 minutes. So you don't have a lot of time to make a first impression on a manager. So all of those are little things that you that are in your control that you could be able to do.
Mhm.
One thing that I want to add to something you said, Brenda, is that I've seen, for instance, like I work in marketing and in luxury, right? So whenever I like or I comment or I share articles that are related to either luxury or marketing, what ends up happening is that other people who might have seen that then go into my profile to see me. So by you liking and by you having an active LinkedIn account where you're doing things that are relevant to your career, to the type of jobs that you're looking for, the effect of that is that other people start looking at you. So it could be a recruiter, it could be a CEO, it could be a colleague. So it does help to be active because other people start to reach out to you and to follow you, and you build your network from there.
Absolutely. And it's if it's something that it's an industry that you really want to stand out in, it's important to be able to continue to be active, because people are definitely, they're looking at you.
Yeah, Melissa, one of our viewers on YouTube reminded us you have to clean up your personal Facebook account as well. I guess you have to go back through your history. There might be certain things on there that you don't want to be on there if a potential employer is looking through that. So that's
no, absolutely. And there are, it's obviously it's something where you want to believe, they're not going to go into all of my personal, social media, but there are employers that do, and they want us research and really get to know something more about your personality. They may go into your Facebook. So if it isn't that you want to go ahead and go through the hassle of like, I'm going to have to clean up all of this, let's say, make sure that you have all of those things on private, or just don't post something that you don't want it to be out there, right?
Right.
I also wanted to ask, oh, sorry, Melissa. Melissa, no. Brenda, my bad. I want to ask, I want to ask a question. Like, have you ever had to, randomly search through, I know you said you didn't, but like, has there been a case where you've had to search through a candidate's Facebook?
If I've had to, no, I mean, I don't, as in our company policy, we don't go through the, personal media, like, Facebook and Instagram and things like that, but we are connected on LinkedIn. So absolutely, I've gone to LinkedIn and be able to connect with different candidates I'm representing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a comment, don't use your real name on. Have you ever also passed through someone who has not used their real name on social media? Like, it's a rare.
No, you know what? No, I haven't really come across that. But, again, I think it's more been, on if things are not matching, somebody may put on their resume that, hey, I worked for this company for 3 years, and then they have on LinkedIn, I worked there for 6 months. Dates that don't match, that is, I think, the biggest one. So making sure that, from that standpoint, that things are definitely matching. I know that some people, like to put other names on their Facebook or other social media, just to not be as searchable. I've heard of that, but it's not really a case, for example, that I've seen that, or I would tell somebody, hey, change your name. But definitely make sure that your LinkedIn and just your professional network is always, it's always to the T, and it's updated and all of that. And if somebody also wants to be creative, I've actually seen this pretty recently, that depending on the field, like Carolina mentioned that she was in marketing, and there's other people that may be a little bit more on the creative side. They are doing a lot of like online, websites or personal websites to just kind of like show a little bit more about themselves, right? There's bio completely. And so just get a little bit more creative. And there's a ton of free websites to do that. Like Wix, I know, is one that's very popular. And I see that a lot, recently, where it's something that people are just also referring to go. And just, again, I think it's also just another way of being able to be more active in the web, as people are searching you to find more information about you. Yeah, so that's definitely something, that's another option as well. So, but yeah, definitely I would say make sure to be active, make sure to be prepared for your interviews. It's a time to do research. Definitely make sure that you're doing research, and you want to have that visual of like, okay, well, you know what, my next step is I want to concentrate on this industry. So let me research on companies that are in our local area that are within that industry. Let me look at their website. Let me look at maybe their social media and get to know a little bit more about them, because you may attract that to you. And then suddenly when you get that interview, hey, you know what, you're able to reference a project, something that they did. And, you know, it just kind of, who knows if that's one detail that would bring you to the next level of the interview. So it, you know, definitely it is a time as we are at our home and we're deciding what is going to be my next step. It's a good time to be able to do that research. So I would say make sure that you stick to a routine if you are, you know, an active job searcher right now, a seeker. Just stick to a routine. I would say still wake up early, just if you were going to your job. Set up, you know, a designated area where you're able to continue to, you know, make that your area of focus, that, you know, that when I'm sitting there, there's no distraction. I don't have Netflix. I don't have anything else that's going to distract me, that I'm just focused on what I'm doing. Set up a plan. Set up a plan of like, okay, today, this is what I'm going to be doing in my little schedule. And what do I want to accomplish for the day? You know, even if it's just one little thing, just kind of setting up yourself and having that little plan, just really helps you keep organized and feel accomplished at the end of the day. So it's not a case where you're like, well, you know, I'm not working and I'm not, you know, and nothing is happening. So you do feel like, you know what, I'm getting something out of my days right now. And even if it's not the whole day, but if you at least plot your schedule and items that you want to accomplish, you know, I think that will make a big difference. And obviously dress for that little while. Make sure that you're dressed for, you know, for the day, that if you do end up getting that last minute interview, you're not like rushing and being like, oh no, I can't do this, you know? So, you know, set up a routine for yourself.
And Brenda, hi, here's Juliana. I had a question. Many people are saying, okay, when are we getting back to the normal? But many business magazines say this is the new normal. A lot of things are going to change because of what's happening now. So maybe it's too early from a recruitment perspective, but are there new skill sets that you see that are being demanded more and more than what it used to be before the whole pandemic happened?
Yeah, I think definitely this pandemic has opened the eyes. People need to be computer savvy. So I think that's very important. You know, if you didn't work with Teams before and Zoom before, it's definitely something you're going to be working a lot more with. I think that the typical skill set that I always hear a lot is, you know, people should know Microsoft Office. That's like, obviously the Excel is very important. So if you don't work a lot with Excel, I think from a skill set standpoint, it's definitely something that you may want to invest your time in, and maybe even, you know, these free online trainings are very helpful to be able to brush up on Excel. You know, it depends a lot on obviously what type of industry you're in, but if you're in something a little bit more creative, or, you know, even in executive assistants that you may think, well, it's just clerical, you know, they are requested, hey, do they know PowerPoint? Do they know Excel? Because they have to create presentations for a CEO. So just, I think in general, being very computer savvy with those is important. If you're in accounting, you have to, you know, it's important that you know QuickBooks. It's a very easy software, but it's important to, you know, it. Because, you know, if you want to start in an entry-level role in accounting, normally the number one request is, okay, great, I just need someone that can do data entry into QuickBooks, you know, so little things like that make a huge difference.
And I want to ask, you talked a lot about routine, even if you're not currently working. So I want to pick your brain a little bit about, for us that are, for those of us that are working and are working from home, some tips. But I got a comment here that I think is a really good comment for those who are looking for work on YouTube. Say we're going on about, in a few days, will be about 2 months in quarantine. If you're a person looking for work and you've been out of work for 2 or 3 months, how do you make that look positive? Or is that even something you put on LinkedIn or on your social media websites that, you know, you've been out of work for 2-3 months? How do you deal with that?
So I think obviously right now, because of this pandemic, it's something that is going to be easy to explain, and it hasn't been that long of a period. But in general cases, when there is a big gap in your employment, that is where it would be positive to do these type of like temporary consulting work and be able to always add on, hey, well, you know what? Yes, I had this gap on my resume, but it was because I took some time off to, you know, improve on take a course, or take additional software skills, or I was doing some temporary work. So I didn't list it because it was just a few, you know, short periods, but it's something that, you know, it kept me active. So going back to like doing those temp or consulting work, freelance work, I think it's very beneficial to explain those gaps, you know, so even though you're not working that entire gap, but you're able to give examples of what you were doing during that time frame.
That's good. Basically, you could tell your potential employer that you've been doing something positive for 4 weeks, you know?
Always say something positive. Absolutely. Always go back to your skill set and
Yeah.
saying something positive, of
That's good.
course.
So I want to move on to those of us that are working and working from home. And maybe we're on our 8th week, for instance, for me, I'm on my 8th week working from home. What are some tips for you? You've been in the business for quite some time, working with employers and employees. What are some tips from you on how we can be more efficient or effective at home? Or how do we even stay connected to our boss? Or, you know, we don't have FaceTime. Most people are not seeing their coworkers, and we don't have that FaceTime with the boss on a regular basis anymore. How do we bring that value working virtually?
I think communication is definitely a big point when you're working from home. You know, and it was challenging for a lot of people. You know, in the beginning, you're like, wait a moment, you know, I'm not seeing. I have teams, I have coworkers, I'm not seeing them, my boss. So make sure that if you are currently working and you do use these chats to be able to stay connected, for example, like Teams, always have it open so you're not missing out on information. Be proactive within, you know, getting information to your boss. And it's okay to ask your boss too, like, hey, I just want to make sure you're hearing from me enough. You know, is there something else that I should be doing? Is there something else that, you know, that I can help you out, you know, right now with? So just being proactive in that communication is important. And I think especially because we see what, you know, is going on right now, making yourself valuable to your company is extremely important. So what else could you bring to the table right now? Yes, you're at home. You know, I gave you these assignments to do, but, you know, what else were you able to do and be able to bring new ideas, you know, is important.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I don't know if you're working with potential employers. I think some individuals are being laid off, and I think employers are starting to see which individuals are very productive because they're taking that proactive stance, because they're trying to bring value to the table, and they're not waiting to be told what to do.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. If you think about it, if everyone is working from home and you have some people that are very quiet and, you know, or maybe you don't know what they're doing, you know, as I was working with some temporary employees, I had, you know, one example where, you know, they were, hey, you know what, I trust in you, you're working from home, but they were missing their deadlines. You would call them, they won't pick up. And, you know, it makes you think secondly, well, should I keep this candidate or will there be somebody that's going to be more responsible or is there somebody else on the team? So anything that you can show that, you know what, hey, and that's where it's kind of going back to the routine. You're up at the hour you go into work, you are setting up your day, you're in your emails, you're doing the follow-ups, you're, you know, staying connected and in communication is so important.
I have a question on communication.
And Brenda, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, dale, Juan.
Okay, so I still go into work. And I'm in constant communication with my boss, but I find it that I guess we have a lost in translation when it comes to either through texting or through emails where, you know, or even on phone calls. Maybe he just like stepped on something and he, you know, it hurt him and he raised his voice on me. And it's not the same as if I had him in person to person, almost to see that body language. And that's something I've relied on, and right now I can't rely on body language as much. So I was just wondering, what do you recommend for like tips just to have that communication? Because I know my boss, he raises his voice, and I raise my voice, and next thing you know, we're very close, and we say a lot of expletive to each other.
Okay. Well, raise your voice maybe not be the best route you want to go on, but I would say that to your point, you can't really mirror and match your supervisors right now or your team members right now, right? So if you feel there's maybe a little bit of lost in translation or communication, maybe it is a good way to set up, hey, you know what, should we do a quick recap call on Zoom or Teams or something like that, so you are getting this visual that we're all getting right now, and you can, you know, sometimes when you see the mannerism and you see the voice and, you know, and all of that, it does improve your communication. So that may be a route you may want to take, just as maybe a recap and just, you know, hey, you know, it'd be great if we could just, can we log on really quick and do a quick call or even a FaceTime, you know, if it can't be that complicated and it's something easy. But just, you know, maybe a couple of minutes of that just really improves your communication.
Thank you.
No, no worries. I think somebody else was going to ask a question, right?
Yeah, so I was
sorry.
going a little bit back
Okay,
to one of
no
the
worries.
answers you gave me, and you're mentioning that some industries seem to be recruiting more right now than others. So which industries do you see more active recruiting right now?
Well, I think everyone is right now analyzing what they're going to be recruiting for, but definitely you do see right now there is an increase in the industries that are considered the essential businesses. So, you know, healthcare, distribution companies, all of those, finance companies, mortgage companies, loans. Those are, you know, definitely companies that are considered essential businesses that are actively right now, you know, are hiring right now.
I did see, for instance, and you mentioned earlier, Brenda, that a lot of customer service positions, Walmart and Amazon have, since the pandemic, have opened over 100,000 jobs in customer service to be able to help with you know,
The volume of work,
right?
yeah.
Right. And I've seen that there's a lot of customer service, and going back to what Brenda was saying, this may not be something permanent, but if it's still some kind of an income and it's still some kind of a buffer for you to be doing something, a new skill set for you to learn, for you to improve your communication skills, it might be something worth considering if you know if you don't have another avenue right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, everybody definitely has their different situations, but it is a time that you want to be flexible, and plus you never know what you may get out of it.
I want to ask a question. So, sorry.
Keep going.
We've talked about working from home, and listening to Juani's situation. Everybody obviously is very, very different, and we never know what's going on at home for each individual. So, Brenda, from your experience, you know, what are things that we should be doing, you know, to be considerate to our coworkers, to be considerate to their in-home life that we may not know about because we're used to them just at work?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely important to have empathy towards others right now because we don't know the different situations people are living, and, you know, maybe they're having difficulty with childcare. Maybe they have elderly parents, you know, so there are definitely a lot of different situations they may be, you know, living through that they're not sharing. So touching base, I think, one-on-one and just kind of saying, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need right now? You know, that is, you know, I think it goes a long way to just show empathy towards others, you know, and even in your same households, you know, to your significant others, to your friends, you know, just, you know, you never know who may be struggling right now. And just, you know, making sure you're doing that personal one-on-one contact with them, I think would make a difference if somebody is going through something. Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted. Oh,
go ahead.
We keep in charge of each other. So I wanted to ask you a question, Brenda. Okay, good. I did not call you Melissa this time. So I had like maybe 6 of my coworkers got furloughed or let go. And, you know, I've been keeping in touch with them like, you know, from time to time saying like, hey, how have you been doing? And like some of them don't even respond because they're not working there anymore. I don't know what the case may be. What are like some words of encouragement that you can give them, especially since now, like besides everything you said, besides like what has been happening and whatnot?
I think the words of encouragement is definitely just make sure that you're telling them, hey, stay focused, still be hopeful, things will improve. All of this that's happening, it's something that it's not only happening to you, it's happening to a lot of people right now. But I'm sure if you keep your faith and you keep positive, something will come around. And, maybe it's something that, who knows, it's even something better than what you had before, because, it may happen, so I would say just making sure you're keeping them positive, it's important.
And how did you bring value from like working from home? Like, how do you bring that?
I'm sorry. What was your question again?
Yeah. Do you want me to reword it in some way? It's fine. Like you're still working from home, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm working from home. Yes. I've been like Eric, working from home for the past 6 weeks now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I recently back from working from home. So how, like, what value have you gotten from that? Like, anything you've gained from working from home, and like any insightful advice you could give that what you've gotten from it?
Yeah, I would say no, sorry, you were freezing up a bit there.
Okay.
No, don't worry. So the value that I've received from working at home, I definitely think it's taught me how to be more patient. I'm somebody who was used to like just wake up, go, go, go. So it's definitely showed me, I have to take a little bit step, and be more strategic of how I'm picturing my days. I have to be more balanced. I actually have a 14-month baby boy too. So working from home, being a mom, and all of these things, it's definitely showed me on one side that I am definitely very blessed that I could get to spend the extra time with my baby, right? So I definitely feel, that's, brought me a lot of value, that, sometimes you do have to just take a little bit of a step back, and that's the way I see it. But it showed me how to be a little bit more patient, balance more my time. And hopefully when I do get back into the back of the rush of the office, I'm able to keep the balance that I'm doing right now at home, so that's, I would say, the value from working at home for me personally.
And I would add, it's also
awesome.
It's challenging, at least me, to come out of that comfort zone. I brought that up earlier, in different areas, and to develop different skill sets. Be more proactive. For me, one of the things is to be more proactive in my tasks. In my particular job, I have a lot of tasks. So I have to be very proactive in getting those accomplished, and not to wait, not to sit back and wait. Oh, I'm home, I have time. Let me, read, watch the news or something else, because I can make my own schedule. But be proactive. So I've been that challenging for myself. It's been good. It's been very positive.
Absolutely. I think you have to show action and being able to be proactive with your task when it comes to work, setting up your days and all of that. So you're able to accomplish more. If not, days will just fly by.
Yeah.
Brenda, when we were going through some of
one
this
area that I've seen. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm saying, just adding maybe to Eric's comment, like one area that I've seen personally working from home that actually has improved a lot is the meetings. So before it was a challenge, a little bit the Latino mentality. I'm always on time. Most of the other people are not.
Yeah.
So it used to frustrate me when you arrived to a meeting room and nobody was there. Now, funnily, meetings are actually starting on time. Because you just basically connect to Microsoft Teams.
Yeah.
And you can have this pop-up window that tells you somebody started the meeting. So you're like, oh, I need to join now. So
yeah,
in general, we have some advice when it comes to virtual meetings, like have you had the same experience, and what?
Yeah, the virtual meetings, you want to definitely make sure you're logged in 5-10 minutes ahead of time, because it's kind of like, well, you know what, you're at home and you're late to a meeting, it's not a good look, right? So you definitely want to try to log in at least 5-10 minutes ahead of time. Make sure that you come prepared to your meetings. When we're talking about teleconferences, come prepared to your meetings. And make sure to speak up. I think we touched upon this, and we're talking when we're communicating with our bosses. So with these conference calls, you don't want to be that person who's like just like silent. So just try to make sure that you're able to add on something of value. If it's something that you can talk about, definitely make sure that you speak up in those conferences.
Somebody brought up a good comment here on Facebook about, you mentioned, Brenda, how you're not going into the office, you're not dealing with traffic, there's not the rush, that daily rush. But you're home now, and I have children as well, you have a little baby, so you're enjoying more of the family time. And the comment here is that some of the leaders, some of the supervisors, some of the folks who have teams or are leading teams are starting to, it's a chance for them to be more to practice more empathy, because they're seeing for themselves what daily life is really like. Because now you're home and you can understand all your employees go through these family disruptions. They have children, they have friends, they have a house that has being renovated, a plumbing problem or whatever. So you see these interruptions. So it's an opportunity for us to sit back and say, okay, there's a couple things that are are more important in life, and it's not always the bottom line. So it's a chance to empathize with those that have a lot of tasks, young kids, school, and you can see that and you can empathize with that. So I thought that was a good comment on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, as managers and leaders, it's kind of going back to that empathy of getting to know as well your teams. And what I'm seeing more and more, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, I post a lot of articles about this, about what ways that you could be able to make your meetings a little bit different when you're working with your teams, right? So sometimes it just kind of like doing things a little bit more fun to keep it light. A lot of companies that maybe, they just suffered through laying off people. You have people who are worried, am I going to be next? So it's important that, you are, it's somewhat how do you keep the focus of your team for them to feel positive and keep going? And maybe sometimes doing a little bit fun and dynamic, on your calls, hey, show me your pet, what, because they may be like here, just sitting and not wanting to oh, this is not appropriate. I'm here, and suddenly your child is crying, comes in, there's all these different elements. It happens, it happens to me all the time. I just apologize if you hear a scream. I apologize if you hear that, but, and just keep focused. But, sometimes bringing in different dynamics, like, hey, show me a pet, or let's do a little game. I heard a team do like Pictionary on a conference call. Even like little things, like I told my team and they were so surprised, because I'm always like, hey, business. And then on a Friday, I told them, hey, to 4 o'clock, I want everyone to bring their favorite drink. We're doing a little happy hour, and we're going to talk about what's your favorite show. And just they were like surprised, really? Because maybe it wasn't something that I maybe had done in our normal meetings, because we're always rushing. But at this time, it's like, hey, I know everyone is having a hard time. It's kind of like good to just sit back, and get to know everyone, a little bit more than maybe the normal routine of work. So. And
in your opinion, do you think we'll get back to that? Offices are leaner, law firms, accounting firms, marketing firms. It's a leaner staff, and working from home is not the rush. I mean, most of us are not dealing with an hour and a half in traffic. I think that's a huge stress relief.
Of course, yeah.
And then being in the office, do you think we'll get back to that rush where, I don't know how to phrase the question, but where the priorities seem to get away from us? Do you think we'll get back there?
It's hard to say, right? Because we can't really predict what's going to happen in the next few months. I think, though, that companies are going to know, hey, we may have the capability of including a little bit more flexibility with working from home. And if people have proven during this time frame, hey, I was able to get my job done and exceed expectations, and and all of that, and doing it from home, I think as we go back into the office, it could open the door for companies to be a little bit more flexible. So I think that is going to be the big game changer with people getting used to this type of new normal. So I think that companies will open. Companies will start like, hey, we need to get focused right now and get back to business. Absolutely, that will eventually happen. But I think individuals will have shifted a little bit, and they're going to be able to ask for maybe a little bit more of that flexibility in being able to relate back to, hey, you know what, I was able to do this before.
Yeah, it's a good point. So employers will develop more trust in this virtual production.
Absolutely.
That's a good, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Brenda, you and I spoke obviously beforehand. So you had shared one of your childhood values, and I thought it was a really nice story. So can you share with everybody else? Because I think it's relevant to work, to life, to being at home and being intentional about everything you do.
Yeah. So yeah, we were talking about values, and I shared with Carolina that, you know, my father would always, growing up, tell me the same phrase over and over. And it's like, you have to plant seeds. You're going to plant the seeds. You're going to put them as many as you can, work really hard. And one day you're just going to lay back and you're going to see the fruits of your labor. And that's the time where you're going to start picking up that fruit, you know? So I think that, you know, as a value, as a little girl, it's something that I always think about. And as a grown up as well. And, you know, and at this time where, you know, it's all of these things going out there and you don't know what to do, I keep reminding myself, well, you know what, I just need to plant the seeds. You know what, just connect with as many people as possible, plant the seeds, because one moment, you know, things will shift and, you know, you're going to get that return back. So, you know, it's definitely was something valuable for me and for my upbringing. Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fortunate that I still have a job. I still have to go to the office. The way that I interact with people is completely different. Obviously, we have sneeze guards, we wear our mask, we disinfect everything after we're done. But it's still stressful. And the way that I would release stress isn't not the same as I would do it now. Like, for example, gyms aren't open. You know, I can't go fight somebody and do judo. I have to be aware of like the distance that I have to be with somebody, or like play basketball. So what are some of the practical things that maybe or ideas that you could have for us that are still going to work, still have that stressful life? And oh my God, Snickers are amazing right now. They are my go-to. And let's not even go there. A second in the lips is a lifetime in the hips, but they are so worth it because of like, I find myself eating more anxiously now.
Of course,
coffee, let's
yeah.
not even go there. Coffee's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, definitely those are things that right now are not access to us. And when I started all of this, I thought in theory, wow, this is fantastic. Everyone is doing free online yoga, Zumba, all of these things. I'm going to be able to take advantage of all of this right now because, you know, obviously I haven't been as active going out to all of these group settings because I had, you know, it's because I have a little baby, right? But, you know, sometimes because you're working, you can't take full advantage of all of these things that are happening, right? So I would say just something as a stress reliever, if you can find time to sit down, to meditate, to do your prayers, you know, maybe something that'll calm you down. I think that, you know, even if you are able to, that may not take a lot of time, you know, may be 10, 15 minutes, maybe before when you wake up or when you know, just go outside your, you know, to your backyard or something like that if you live in a house, but just find your little space. I think, you know, meditate is something that will be, it's good. You can order puzzles on Amazon, you know, that I see a lot of people doing that, doing those type of activities. I see a lot of puzzles lately. You know, something just different than obviously watching your Netflix, which, because, you know, I know everyone is doing that very actively right now, but, you know, doing those type of little exercise journaling. You know, I know that, you know, a lot of times we always say, yeah, I want to journal more, but I don't get the opportunity to. So maybe this is a good time to do that, and just kind of like making a list of the things that your little bucket list, you know, or things like that, you know, maybe exercises that can help you, you know, kind of look forward to something in the future and stay positive, knowing that, you know what, this is just temporary. This, you know, eventually I will be able to, you know, get to do all of these other things that, you know, that I wanted to do.
Brenda, I have a question for you. So how do you balance faith with like work? Like, for instance, I have like this whole quarantine pandemic, whatever you may call it, it has led me to, well, along with the help of some friends I have, I started doing the Marian consecration, like just, you know, getting closer to Mary and stuff. Also, I've been also doing the rosary a lot more. I tried playing the ukulele, but that I never had time for. I'm having a hard time with that. And also I've been like decorating books. Like I plan to go back to school. So a notebook for that with stickers to motivate me, and then one for recipes to cook more, and then another one for like grad schools, like to motivate me more, like, you know, to go back to applying. So how have, like, in your sense, like I've like tried to, I'm really nervous here. I've been nervous the whole time.
Why?
That's why I've barely been talking.
It's just a group of your closest friends.
But
so how do I balance, I guess, faith and actions is what you're saying?
Yeah, because I've been like encouraging my coworkers. I know it's like not the right time in a workplace and stuff, but some feel like they need encouragement, like for faith, and I tell them, like, they're so impressed with it. I've spoken to like some partners there because they're very Catholic, and I've shared them my views on that. So how do you balance faith with like work action, even though, you know, it's kind of like, I don't want to say the impossible, even though it may seem impossible, but like, you know, like it's very challenging.
Yeah,
So
it is challenging. But I think that the way you balance, you know, your faith and action is that, you know, when God sees you doing your part, he will do his part. You know, we may not see it in the time we may want it to be happening, or because not everything happens in the timing that we want, but it's important that you do stick to doing your part. And as you were saying, you want to go back to school. You know what? I'm preparing my notebooks. I'm preparing my bag. But you know what? Don't forget to look up the schools, fill out the applications, you know, what is the essays or whatever you need necessary. So it is important that you're doing your part, you know, and going back into like seeking for a job, you know, are you doing your part, which means, are you improving on your skills? Are you updating your resume? Are you making sure to take the steps to get notice? Are you doing the research and applying to the jobs? Because if you don't do all of that, then obviously, you know, I can have faith, but you know, it may not, it's God is not going to needs to meet you halfway, right? So I think that's how I look at balancing, you know, my faith and balancing, you know, the actions, you know, it could be very helpful too right now to seek mentors, have conversations, you know, with them, you know, maybe career coaches. And sometimes we have these mentors and these group of people like in our network, you know, and we just haven't really taken the time of like, you know what, I want to like approach this person. I may call Carolina and be like, hey, you know what? Can we do a quick video conference? Let's have a little coffee date. You know what? I really love what you do. How did you get there? What steps did you take? What advice could you give me? Hey, you know what? I'm going to call Eric. Hey, you have this type of job. Can you look at my resume and just take a couple of moments to like see what you would change on it? So, you know, sometimes you have these individuals right here in your network and we just never really approach them. So maybe like right now is a good opportunity to do that. You know, again, it's just making steps that are going to get you further along the line. So, you know, obviously we have to take all of this that's happening in all of the situations, you know, as, you know, they're blessings nonetheless, and that eventually things will shift and things will start happening for us. But you also have to do your part and move and do your steps, you know, towards accomplishing what you're looking for.
Right. And sorry to cut you off, but Amanda asked a question. How has your faith impacted your work or life during this time? I think that's the same that you answered now, right? Like the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that answer.
Thank
and
you.
I hear this theme of being proactive. We all have a lot of free time on our hands, and it's not an opportunity to just, you know, be lazy or just sit down or just wait for good things to happen. But be proactive. If you don't have a job, find a way to increase your skill set. If you do have a job, bring value to your work. Reach out to your friends. Look to reach out to somebody who is doing something that you would like to do. So I really enjoyed listening to that answer about how you do your part and allow the Lord then to come in and do his part. But don't just sit back and wait for great things to happen. Get out there and be proactive.
Be proactive. Absolutely. You have to definitely do your part of the deal, right?
Nothing to it but to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Brenda, I don't know if you covered it earlier. How did you get into Robert Half in like the recruiting field?
Yeah. So that is an interesting question, because I always think it's like very destiny. And I think like it's happened to me in many occasions where I just kind of have to really trust, what is the opportunity, and have faith of what the new opportunity that's coming around. But before I came to Robert Half, I worked 8 years for Ann Taylor, the store. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I've been living though in Miami for 15 years. So this is now my community. And so I transferred and everything with Ann Taylor. They had me managing the Aventura store. And so my boss at the time thought I had a really good eye for talent and made me their recruiting ambassador. So I would basically do interviews for other stores and just kind of select individuals. And as part of all of this, I would just be like, oh, well, I love doing this recruiting aspect. And I remember that there was a school, Johnson & Wales, that called looking for, hey, do you guys be interested in joining our career fair? So I asked my boss, and he's like, well, we really don't like pay to do this stuff. And I'm like, I'll do it for free. I'm like, I'm all about it. I just want to just go out there, do something different, and obviously recruit people for the store. So he was like, sure, absolutely. So I did it. And right next to me was the table for Robert Half. And as I was talking to people, they were looking at me and they're like, well, you could do what we do. Why don't you come in and interview? And I remember I took the card. I was like, I'm okay, but thanks. I didn't know anything about the staffing industry at all, but I took the card with me and I had it on my desk and I had it and it just kept calling my name. And I'm like, you know what? I lose nothing. What is the chances of this happening to me? So I should explore and see what it's about. So I did. I made the call. I had 9 interviews in one day. And I got an offer. And what I thought maybe was, maybe I'll just do this for a little bit as I'm looking for my next step, led to 14 years of an amazing career that I wouldn't have changed for the world, because it's given me a lot of opportunities to do so much for so many people, and just grow professionally. But you kind of have to pay attention to all of those signs that life is throwing at you and that God may be throwing at your way, because you may completely be like, nope, I'm not changing that. I'm not changing that. I'm not stepping away from my comfort zone. And then it leads you to something else completely different.
And I'm one of those people, quick plug, Robert Half and Brenda helped me get my job last year. I've been there almost a year.
I was going to say, I was like, your name is so familiar. I placed you at the Miami Foundation, didn't I?
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, is she the same one? Yeah. And so, see, I found Cheryl actually looking for, a position with a nonprofit, and she was even working at the time. We were like coordinating. I'm like, just make a little moment to go and meet my client. You're just perfect for this. And then she ended up getting hired. I brought you a cake, even.
Awesome.
Right?
All my colleagues were super jealous.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said something. I was like, I wonder if he's the same one. So
yeah. Oh wow. But I actually wanted to ask you, I mean, you mentioned it in your
Oh.
story. Sorry, how do you spot talent?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are like some tips that say, okay, this is how I know this is the person for the job?
Well, I think that I trust a lot my gut feeling when it comes to people presenting themselves in a professional manner, and being honest of what they're really looking for, why they left, why they left each position, if it's something of value. So little things like that help. Obviously, when we meet individuals, obviously presentation is important, and I'm not saying that everyone has a business suit at their house, but how you present yourself is important. So if you're coming conservative to an interview, even if it's with just a button shirt and slacks, but it's just showing that you really care and that you're taking this seriously.
Brenda, I have a question for you.
No, sorry. No, I was going to say just that, and I tell this to my team all the time because, sometimes, and that's why, going back to like the LinkedIns and the video and all of these type of, exposing yourself out there is so important, because sometimes those resumes are such a limited presentation of somebody. So, when we meet with somebody in a recruiting one-on-one, my team or myself are able to give that advice of, hey, you know what, it would be great if you just make these little tweaks, or hey, you know what, just change this up in your appearance. It may help you get that next interview.
That's awesome. I have a question for you. So did you always struggle like getting your word out, like when you're recruiting and stuff? Like, for example, when you just started and you're like, oh my gosh, like, have you ever had a moment, you know, like a freak out moment?
Yeah, freak out moment. I think we all have a lot of freak out moments at
Yeah.
all times. So that's okay. And yeah, I mean, in my world, it is a lot to do with business development too. So, you know, what we do, we have to be in contact with a lot of companies, and companies call us back and trust our judgment when it is exploring talent, right? So you know, in the beginning, it was very hard. I stayed focused of like, you know what, at one client at a time, I just need to do my best and know that I'm always doing my best with each client, and then I'm providing them the best service, because one client happy is going to call me, another client is going to call me again, and that's going to refer me to other people. So I think it doesn't matter what you do, what your job is, it's important that, you know, that you always deliver, you know, excellent in what you're doing, and try to be the best, you know, the best you can at it, and be honest with yourself. And I know when sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I could have done a better job. You know what? I should have stayed longer. I should have called more people. And then I try to, you know, go back and be like, no, you can do better. You know you can. And I like to believe that every time I share a profile with my clients, I'm trying to share the best people that I have in my pool of candidates available in that moment, and that you know, so they become repeat clients, obviously, you know.
Wow, that's awesome. And going back to like the interview, like information that you were explaining to us, like, you know, showing your best self, even if you don't have a business suit. How about like when it's time to like present yourself in a word on interview? Like, for example, I got let go of my other job, and then 2 months later, I had an interview for where I work now, an accounting firm, and I was like nervous. I didn't know what to say. Like sometimes, and then they still hired me. Like, I've heard that it's good that when you show nervousness at a job interview. I don't know if like you have any like feedback on that. Why is that? Even if you're
Well, I would
like real quick.
say, yeah, to be nervous in an interview if it's good. You know, I wouldn't say that, you know, it will work all the time, or if it doesn't work, but I think it's important to show your true self, you know, in a professional manner. So it may be in that moment they hired you as nervous as you were, they probably something like genuine about you in that interview where they felt, you know what, this person is going to be a good worker. They're going to be a loyal worker. So, you know, that came across throughout the nerves. And, you know, sometimes you do get lucky in that sense where, you know, the employer is able to spot those soft skills. You know, so if that's important to that company, they, you know, they will hire you.
Awesome. And Aldo asked a question. So what's the most challenging industry that you've recruited for, like that you have experienced?
The most challenging industry, I would say insurance. The insurance industry is hard. I think it's just because they do have a lot of regulations because of, you know, their licenses, and, you know, not as many people have that. So I think for, you know, from a recruiting aspect, that is definitely a challenging role. But I mean, in general, you know, it is every position could have the potential of being challenging, because you have to speak to a lot of people. So even the business side, when you're the business development side, on the candidate side too, you know, you have to speak to a lot of candidates and see if there's something that's something they would consider as well, you know. So I think it's just important that, you know, that you talk to many on the recruiting aspect, right? It's talking to as many people as possible, so you can differentiate who has that skill set, that, you know, the better skill set, and you're able to compare. Absolutely.
Right. And Karen, a question: how to better respond to the what's your best strength and weakness question? Long or short resume?
Oh, I'm sorry. You were freezing up there again.
I think. Oh well, I think she means what's like your best and strength weakness question, like at a job interview.
Just right. Yeah. So you always want to definitely make sure that's a common question, right? So you want to make sure that you think about this always before, and always make sure, you know, your strengths can always be about, you know, being talking about being proactive. We're talking about being, so talk about like how, if you were organized, if you're proactive, all of those type of things that show that soft skill, I think is a good answer to that question of about talking about your strengths. When you're talking about your weakness, I would be very careful to maybe not just go into something on a complete negative. You still want to keep it as positive as possible. So maybe sometimes you may hear someone say, well, you know what, my previous boss, they thought that, I would take, my weakness was that I took on too much, but it's still showing something positive about you, so always try to think about, your weakness as something that it still shows a positive characteristics, I think.
Like, for example, would you like to hear someone like as their weakness say, oh, I'm not good at math? Like, I mean, it depends on where you work.
Listen, if right. I know that you're an accountant, so if you, so if you say, hey, my strength is not math, and you're applying for an accounting job, it definitely is not going to look very good on you. So, yeah, absolutely, you want to make sure that's something you can avoid. Sometimes it's great to show your true self in an interview and absolutely be honest. But also you want to be very careful. You're still at the end of the day, you are in an interview and you are competing, let's say with other people who are applying to this job too. So you want to be very careful as well about some of those, answers.
When do you think is the best time to interview?
Thank you, Brenda, for sharing with us.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just had a question. When do you think is the best time to interview? Because I know if you go for like the end of the day, people are tired. If it's too early, do you have any suggestion for that?
I think that the best time to interview is the time that you are going to be not in a rush, and that you could be able to concentrate fully on the interview. So I think for the company itself, I don't think that they're going to be too much of a difference if it's in the morning time or it's in the evening time. But sometimes if you are working and you're like, hey, I need to step out for a quick interview, you're not telling that you're to boss, right? But you're stepping out for an interview and you feel rushed, you probably will be rushing on the interview as well. So make sure that whatever time it is that you suggest, it's a time that you have enough time to get there, that if you're leaving your current job to go to the interview and hey, well, there's going to be traffic along the way, you don't want to show yourself rushed last minute, or hey, I showed up late because there came in traffic, and now you're anxious and nervous. So make sure that the time that you set, you do designate it, and that you are being able to be prepared for the interview, that you have enough time to prepare for it.
All right, Brenda, I have, one last question before we wrap up. What is like a quote or model that you would say for people to, like if they feel like giving up, like, looking and whatnot?
If they're a quote, I'm sorry, that a quote that I like.
Yeah, like a quote or model, a model that you think will like inspire others to keep going up, because how like times like these we maybe feel hopeless and not know where to go.
For me, I mean, my quote that I always gives me strength when I think of like, okay, this is a tough time, or I need to like just have a little bit more faith. I always think like, well, God's plans are bigger for me than the plans I have for myself. So if I think about that, it gives me a sense of relief of like, what, I need to trust that I am in good hands, and that, he has something bigger for me. This was not it. This was not it. I need to trust that something is going to happen, and I will know it when it happens.
Right. All right. Well, Brenda, thank you so much for sharing it with us. It was so great to have you tonight.
Thank you so much for all of you.
To share our questions in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today, and for all of the awesome questions. Hopefully I was able to give some advice that will be helpful, and please feel free to reach out to me if you do have any additional questions. I know that you shared my Instagram or my LinkedIn page. Feel free to reach out to me and reference that, so I know that where you're coming from too. So hopefully this is not the end of our conversation, and we can still stay connected.
And you could be the next Cheryl.
I'll do everywhere.
Yeah.
And you could be the next Cheryl.
You could be the next Cheryl.
It's like an ad.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You're absolutely. That was a nice surprise.
Yeah, I want to say,
I love that.
I also want to thank you, Brenda, very much for an
Mhm.
uplifting talk. A lot of great back and forth from everyone, and
Mhm.
really good advice on looking for work or staying productive where we are and adjusting to our current situation. So I thought that was
Absolutely.
great. So thank you very much,
definitely-
and to all of us that have joined us on YouTube and here through Zoom, thank you. Follow us on Facebook. We are active on Facebook. We talked about that earlier. So follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to subscribe to that channel, the Aku channel, which helps put these events on. And look out for our emails. So thank you again. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And we will be in touch and hope to see all of you again in June.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Juan.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.